In this presentation, we take a hard look at a powerful and emotionally charged claim that immigration is driving Canada's rise in crime. Rather than relying on headlines, anecdotes, or political talking points, we walk through what the data actually show. We will look at national crime indicators, how they line up with immigration levels, what Canadian and international research concludes, and why certain narratives persist even when they contradict the evidence. By the end, you'll see that this claim is not just misleading, it is flatly at odds with the facts. The answer is clear and evidence-based. Immigration is not a key cause of rising crime in Canada. Decades of Canadian data show that immigrants, whether recent arrivals or long-established residents, consistently commit fewer crimes than Canadian-born people. Crime trends over the last 10 to 15 years do not move in step with immigration levels, and the modest post-pandemic increase in crime is far better explained by social and economic stressors such as mental health challenges, housing instability, and the toxic drug crisis. Claims that immigration is to blame are political narratives, not conclusions supported by credible evidence. If immigration were truly driving crime, we would expect crime rates to rise most sharply in regions that receive the largest number of newcomers, and to move in obvious lockstep with increases in immigration targets. That is not what we see. Canada's crime severity index rose modestly after 2020, but that shift began before immigration targets were raised and affected provinces with very different newcomer profiles. British Columbia and Alberta saw changes shaped by the toxic drug crisis and local economic pressures, while Ontario, the largest destination for newcomers, did not display a pattern of crime linked to immigrant populations. The timing and geography simply do not support the idea that immigration is the primary driver. Canadian research across multiple decades shows a remarkably stable pattern. Immigrants are less likely to be involved in crime than people who are born in Canada. Statistics Canada and academic studies find that newcomers have lower overall offending rates, lower incarceration rates, and lower involvement in violent crime. This holds true across economic immigrants, family-sponsored immigrants, and refugees. Second-generation Canadians, the children of immigrants, also tend to have equal or lower crime rates than the national average. These findings reflect strong labor market participation, family stability, and strong community ties in many newcomer communities. To understand recent changes in crime, we have to look at the real drivers. Police services, public health agencies, and criminology institutes point to a combination of factors: untreated or poorly treated mental health conditions, severe housing precarity, the spread of an increasingly toxic and unpredictable drug supply, and pressure on local policing and social services. These dynamics intensified during and after the pandemic, and they intersect in ways that increase certain types of crime and visible disorder. None of these factors track closely with immigration levels, and the data do not show higher rates of these offenses concentrated in immigrant communities. In other words, the causes we can actually measure and verify are not immigration-related. Canada is not an outlier. When researchers study immigration and crime in other countries, the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, Sweden, Australia, and across the European Union, they repeatedly find the same thing: higher immigration does not lead to higher crime. In many cases, regions that welcome more immigrants experience lower crime rates overall. Newcomers are typically screened before arrival, they are motivated to work and build stable lives, and they have a strong incentive to avoid conflict with the law. This global body of research lines up neatly with Canada's own experience, and it undermines arguments that try to link immigration to crime waves. If the data are so clear, why does the claim persist? One reason is that blaming immigration for crime simplifies complex problems into a single, emotionally charged target. It's easier to point at a visible group of newcomers than to talk about underfunded mental health systems, toxic drug supply, housing crises, or long-term inequality. Politicians and online influencers can use this narrative to mobilize fear, resentment, and a sense of cultural threat. Social media amplifies quick, emotional claims far more effectively than it amplifies careful, data-driven explanations. As a result, the myth spreads quickly, even though it is contradicted by national statistics and serious research. Immigration is not driving Canada's rise in crime. The timing and distribution of crime trends do not match immigration levels, and the best available evidence shows that immigrants commit fewer crimes than Canadian-born residents. The real drivers of recent crime fluctuations are structural: mental health pressures, housing instability, toxic drugs, and strains on public services and policing. Blaming immigration distracts from these real issues and unfairly stigmatizes communities that are, statistically, less likely to offend. Understanding this distinction matters, because a country that bases policy on myths will miss real solutions and deepen divisions instead of building safer, more inclusive communities. This slide lists the sources that underpin the analysis in this presentation. The McGill University News article by Agenman summarizes rigorous research showing that immigration does not increase crime, while also explaining why public perceptions often move in the opposite direction. The Canadian Research Data Centre Network's working paper on Immigration and Crime, Evidence from Canada, provides detailed Canadian data and shows that regions with higher shares of immigrants often experience lower crime rates. The John Howard Society of Canada report explains in accessible language how immigration and crime interact over time in Canadian communities and why increased immigration can coincide with declining crime. The Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research piece, The Mythical Tie Between Immigration and Crime, offers a nuanced review of long-term incarceration and crime data in the United States, showing that immigrants are consistently less likely to be imprisoned than native-born individuals. The Statistics Canada daily release on police-reported crime statistics, along with the Crime and Justice Key Indicators on the Crime Severity Index, provide the authoritative national numbers used to track crime trends by year and across provinces. The systematic review by Light and Miller, hosted by the U.S. National Institutes of Health, looks at multiple studies of immigration and crime in the United States and finds no evidence that higher immigration leads to more crime. Finally, the University of Denver's analysis of myths and disinformation about immigration helps explain how false claims, including those tying immigration to crime, circulate and become politically useful despite contradicting evidence. For more fact-based content about Canadian politics, democratic health, economic trends, and rhetorical analysis, the Facts for Canadians platforms offer ongoing resources and educational material. These outlets aim to strengthen public understanding, improve media literacy, and support evidence-based democratic engagement.